Hey, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I am your streamer, and I use the stream to teach people about Python and the Django web framework using a project that I've got on as a side project. We're going to work on adding Celery to our website tonight, and specifically adding it to a bundle of code they call a Shiv App. So that's the plan tonight. Hope you will stick around to figure out how this is going to work and see how well this goes. I will drop the issue into our chat, and our chat is open, but don't be a jerk. You're free to ask me anything about Python or Django. And yeah, if you enjoy what you see and you want to catch more later, I post these videos on YouTube, so you can subscribe to me there as Matthew Lehman. You can search for me. And I also have a website and a mailing list and all that good stuff, and a Twitter account. You can check out the details above, mattlehman.com or mblehman on Twitter. I also have a Patreon if you're feeling super generous, and I wanted to just thank my patrons, current patrons Mark and Patrick, for their contribution to this. It helps motivate me to get going. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So in previous streams, I've been working to build up a bundled application. The whole point of this is to make deployment easier. And it makes deployment easier by having less to do during deployment. All of the code is bundled during the continuous integration, so that by the time deployment happens, it's really take a file from an Amazon S3 bucket, which is just a place to store files, and put it on the server and start it. That's the goal. And we've already done this with the web server part of this. So the site today, and I guess I should bring up the site, it's a College Conductor. The site today is using this system of using a bundled up application, and it's running GUnicorn under the hood. And now we need to extend that, and so that to make our bundled code capable of running other tools, Python tools that are also used on the website. And the one to focus on first is Celery. And I think, let's see, I guess we have a note here, or I have a note, I did some research on the side that will maybe help in this process, but we'll walk through the code and figure it out. So let's get going. I use Vim as my editor, and we're going to open up the pertinent file, which is this main file. At the end of the last stream, we had to do a bit of refactoring on our main file. It was designed to handle one of two paths. You could either run the web server GUnicorn if it was given no arguments, or it could run Django's manage command. And that's for purposes of running migrations, of running some other built-in commands that are there, running some custom commands that I've created. And the bundle needed to be able to do that, still needed that interface. And so we were refactoring that code with the purpose of making it possible to add additional tools to that set. And you can even see we got so far as the GUnicorn part is done. It's down here, and there's the Django manage command is here, and we put in a stub implementation for Celery right here. And the way this main function flows is looks for a command that's provided as a first argument, and if that argument is in a set of commands that are defined at the bottom here on line 40, so that command can either be named Celery or it can be named manage, we'll launch a function that is designed to do the actual running. So for Django manage's case, it's this call to execute from command line, which if you ever look at the manage.py file, that's what it's calling under the covers. And so we essentially need to find the equivalent command that we can run under the covers, the main entry point, to run a Celery Worker. Celery, if you've never used it before, is a background management tool. So the way this flows is Django might have work that takes a long time to do, and you don't want to make your users have to wait around for that work to happen. So in that scenario, you kick off some work to Celery, and Celery on its own timeline in the background, away from the worker, does the actual work. And so that's basically what Celery is, in case you were curious. But we don't actually need to work too much with Celery today. We just need to make sure that it's running. So what we have to do is replace this print line that is a dummy print for now with the actual tool to run Celery. So like I said, I did a little bit of research, and I think that the thing that we want to call is this thing right here, this worker main. But we need to make sure that we do it with all the right settings and such to make that possible. So I brought up the documentation, and that's what we're seeing here. And worker main says run Celery Worker using ArgV. There is a bit of a challenge here as well that I'm not sure about. This may very well run Celery Worker, but Celery Worker is not the only thing I have to run. If you work with Celery, there's a couple of, well, there's a bunch of different pieces that you can run, but the two that I use most, one is Celery Worker, and the other is Celery, if I can type, Celery Beat. Celery Beat is a scheduler that follows a schedule that's defined in the settings, in Python settings, and at certain intervals will kick off a task to do. So if there's you can think of it like a cron implementation, or if you're familiar with cron jobs. So we have to make sure that both of these pieces can be baked into the Shiv app, which is the bundled code, and work appropriately. So I'm speculating that worker main, that Celery Beat is just a fancy worker that is given more abilities, and that if you provide the right arguments to worker main, that it'll do the right thing. I am not positive of that, so we're gonna have to see how it goes. So we're gonna hack on this and figure out how close we are to this process, and just try it out. So the thing that I want to do is figure out where this worker main comes from. We're looking at I believe it's the Celery App class. Yeah, so this is the class that we're trying to construct, that we need to construct in order to call main. And that, I want to say, I've already defined somewhere else. So in conductor, hey, welcome back, Anime Lover. In conductor, there is a Celery file that I believe constructs the app. Yeah, here it is. So I think our main script is going to have to import this app and then call worker main. And if, fingers crossed, maybe that's all that we have to do. It perhaps might have a weird interaction with the web server, but I'm not really sure. We're gonna see. So let's go over to our main file, and up here I want to say this is conductor Celery. So let's say from conductor Celery import app. Do I want to do that? I think it's because if I'm thinking about this way, app is very generic. So if I have app defined here, what if I needed other commands that happen to have apps for some reason? So what if we do this instead? Let's say from conductor import Celery. That might be good enough. And now down in the run Celery function, we can call celery.app and access it that way. And then try worker main and pass in ArgV. I don't know if that's all there is to it. We're gonna have to experiment with it and see if it's right, but that's my working theory for now. There's another piece to this, is that we're gonna have to line up the ArgV list. So Celery is going to generally expect a certain order of arguments, and that was super vague. So let's break that down. There's a playbook where this is defined, And you can see it here. So the whole reason I have to do this is because this virtual environment that I built previously on my web server is going to go away. I've bundled all of that code into one application, and that application is like acting like this unit of stuff. So I don't have a directory of tools that I can just point at. So essentially, I think what I want to be able to do is change this right here, this virtual environment bin, to be something like serve, I'm trying to remember where I put it, apps, and then I think I called it conductor PYZ, and then that's the bundle, the name of the bundled file. And then the other parameters are what would go into that file. So when the Shiv app, which is conductor.pyz, runs, it's going to have the ArgV is like all of the arguments that get passed in on the command line, if you're not super familiar with programming. So that means that it includes the file name itself. So that would be this first one of serve apps conductor.pyz plus Celery plus worker and -- app conduct, all the stuff that's in these few lines, everything after the command equal, are going to be put into a list and pumped into that ArgV list. Now, if you compare this to the previous version, Celery, when it's run as its own executable, has one fewer item here. It thinks it is the binary that's running, whereas in this example here with serve apps conductor.pyz, that is the executable that's running. So I think what's going to happen is if we try and run this the first time, Celery is going to freak out because it's not going to know what the right subcommand is, and it's going to say, I don't know how to run Celery. So we'll have to do a slice to say, like, actually I want all of the arguments from the ArgV list after the conductor PYZ, if that makes sense. Which is a pretty, it's not a hard change to make. You do an array slice, and I'll show the syntax for that. Or I already actually have an example. The same exact problem was true of Django's command. It expected that the first argument was the manage.py file, and that wasn't true in this list as I just described. So we have to say start at index 1, which excludes the first element. Remember, Python lists are 0 indexed. So exclude the first element and put in everything else and treat that as the ArgV list. So I think, in fact, I might even go so far just to say, like, that's going to be the case. So let's just guess that that's the right way and cross our fingers and see if we nail it. So, okay. And for the moment, let's just save the configuration over here as well, just because why not? We might have to make that change anyway. So the way that when I want to test this is test it locally. And to test it locally, we're going to build a version of the Shiv app with a package script that I built, and then run it and see what happens. But I think what I want to do before I even get to that is the Shiv app right now, or the packaging script, which I can bring up, is kind of dumb. And I can even see what I did last time. So when I'm building this on continuous integration, it expects to have a virtual environment bin area. And that's not what we want here, because when I'm working locally, I'm working with the virtual environment already executed. So I don't need to, in fact, if I type which Python, you'll see what I'm talking about. So my virtual environment isn't even in the source directory. It's not like something local, although I could have made it that way, but I chose not to because I use some different tools. And so what I want to do is say, like, no, if you can, ignore this bit, because assume that in my local development, I've got the virtual environment activated, and all the stuff's already in my path, and so I don't need to do this. The way I've been doing this right now is been commenting this out, and so when it's commented out, you can see that the effect of that is that this thing will be empty, and it will just try and call Shiv. So I think what I want to do, what is it I want to do? I probably want to, how do I want to approach this? There's a couple of ways that I can approach this, and I'm trying to think the best way. The simplest way probably is only set venv when circle CI is enabled. That's not a bad idea. So my continuous integration stuff where this package script actually runs is circle CI. I've covered this on a number of streams. Circle CI has some built-in environment variables. So let's check out what those are, because I never remember. It's a big long list. Circle CI, I have it in my search history. So there's going to be one like use CI or circle CI enabled or something like that. And that's going to be what we want. Yeah, here we go. Oh wow, it's even easier than I thought. So they have a variable called CI, which is set to a value of true. So that's probably it. We could also like search specifically for circle CI, but maybe this is something that the CI vendors are all kind of centralizing around to say like, hey, let's all say that we have a CI environment variable, and so if people switch between us, then they get the benefit of not having to update a bunch of scripts. So let's check this, and again, I don't write bash scripts that often, so I don't even remember how to do if statements in bash. It's terrible, but we'll look it up. There's probably something that I've referred to 1,000 times because I write bash scripts every once in a blue moon. And so we want to do a string compare, I think. And it looks like equality is the thing. So the syntax for these is I always find it fiddly. So I think it's just this with angle brackets. So let's come in here and say if, what, is that going to be the right syntax? Let's find out. So if CI is equal to true, then we want to do something. And good grief, is it like this with a semicolon? I'm not sure. I want to say yes. Here's how we can check this out though. We can say, or let's comment out all this stuff so we don't run a bunch of extra stuff. We're going to clean all this up. It's okay. And then we can say echo CI was true. And if we don't get that, then we have CI was something else. Okay. So that's probably cool. And I'm going to run it without seeing CI. Whoops. Unary operator expected. Unary operator expected. So apparently I'm not doing something wrong. Right. What do we have here? Maybe we just want, maybe even simpler than that, we can just do if the string is non-zero length, because otherwise, like in my other context, I'm not going to be setting CI. So let's change this to, what was it, N? Yeah, N. And then we can delete everything up to that square bracket. Try running it again. Huh. Why does it think that CI was true? True if length of string. What's going on here, folks? Maybe it needs to be wrapped. Again, bash is totally fiddly. Okay, I think that's probably the right syntax this time. So I think it was interpreting the dollar curly braces CI as a string because I left it unquoted. But now that I quoted it, it can do the proper interpolation on that and then determine it's an empty string. Crazy, but that's the case. So here we said, we ran it and it said CI was something else. That's what we want. And now if let's simulate being circle by temporarily setting CI just for this command. That's what that first part is. That's a really, so this is like anytime you want to run a command, and let's say it's like it's called, the command is my command. So $ is the prompt, and you want to add some variable just for that command. You put in, whatever it is, and then you say my command. And for the execution time of that command and that command only, it will know that some variable is available with that value of a value. The next time you run it, it's not exported to your environment, so it won't be there. So now if I say CI is true, then cool, it gets the string length is non-zero this time, so that's what we want. So let's do that, and then let's take our VN thing here and put it like this. And then we don't need that stuff anymore. And then we can uncomment this. So I think that's probably enough to make sure that this script will work appropriately on CI. And then when I run it locally, it'll just be pretty transparent and do the right thing. Okay, so let's try running it now and see if it builds the Shiv App. And this process is, unfortunately, it's a little slow. Because the idea with Shiv Apps is that once you have the tools in place, most of the time I'm not building this unless I have to. Yeah, see, unless I have to. Yeah, okay. It's expecting circle SHA-1. That's also annoying. What can we do about that? I could export that locally, or also I could do something like, now we're in the other context, so we can say circle SHA-1 and then just give it a junk value. That may work, but the problem with that is that when it gets to this call down here with pip, I'm not sure that that will be available when pip does its thing. Let's try. The worst that happens is I'm wrong or I'm right, and we have to do a little bit more. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So I didn't export it, and I didn't change this command to say, circle SHA-1 is ABCD. So when the pip command runs and tries to create a package for conductor, it can't find the circle SHA-1 value, so it doesn't know what to do. So I think what we should be able to do is do circle SHA-1 equals something, and package. I'm hoping that that should work, because now this is saying that Circle SHA-1 is going to be used for the entire life of that script execution. Anime Lover, what did you mean by 1 more week? 1 more week till school starts? Or I can't remember if you're the person that was doing college stuff, or maybe I'm thinking of someone else. And if I am, my apologies. Okay, package built. There it is. It looks like I used ABC last time. So let's just delete that so we don't confuse them. And let's try running just Celery by itself. So conductor, ABCD, UIZ, Celery. So what this will do, if you're coming back to main over here, is if it's named Celery, it's going to call the run Celery function, which should come into our stuff here and invoke worker main if all is going according to plan. Oh, okay. I restarted my computer, so I don't have RabbitMQ working right now, but what we're seeing is a really good sign. So let me start Rabbit in a separate tab, because it gets, you probably can't see it because I've got my tabs hidden in the thing, but it gives me a bunch of like noise, constantly changing the tab title, even if I run it in the background for some reason. So RabbitMQ is the server. It is a tool that acts as they call it a message bus. So the way Celery works is the app server has a connection to Celery, and its job is to enqueue things. It put things on the queue, and so that queue is stored in RabbitMQ, which again is sometimes called a message bus. So messages are going onto the queue, and the workers are then looking at the queue from RabbitMQ and polling it and saying, like, do you have any work for me? Do you have any work for me? And if they do, then it hands off. But in order for Celery to work, well, in this configuration anyway, you have to have RabbitMQ running so that when Celery starts up, it says, where should I be looking for work? So now that RabbitMQ is running, we can try running this again. And cool. It's not running with all of the settings I expected. Maybe it is. Let's find out. So we're importing the app directly here, which maybe is different from configuration file. In this other context, yeah, this is actually even better. In this other context, like the way this was before, when it was just the Celery executable by itself, it doesn't know which app you're running. So you have to specify, I'm running conductor Celery app, which I don't remember. Why did I call it? Okay. I apparently gave it a rename, but this may not even be needed anymore as we switch to this mode, which is cool. Although maybe I import those. Let's go to a tasks file. Tasks are where these things are created. Okay, I still need it, but that's fine. I'll leave it around. So in this settings, we're not going to need this line. We're only going to need the extra lines. And the other bit that I'm not crazy about right now is that it's running as a worker, but I want it to be able to also run Celery Beat. And I don't remember if the output is different between the two. So let's try passing different variables to it and see if that changes the behavior. So first, let's try worker, see what that does. Usage. Oh, maybe this is not quite what I was thinking. Unrecognized arguments. With this, let's see what that says. We search for it. Yeah, it's not liking the list. Okay. Well, let's carry on and think a little bit on what we have to do. First, we can try changing this to, you know, some of the other settings that were in there, like there's a logging or a log level. So let's see if log level, if that is accepted. Yep, it looks like it's already spitting out more information. It's telling us which tasks there are. So we can try that, changing that to debug, let's say, and it'll probably dump out a lot of information. Yep. So that's working properly. What's a little disappointing is I'm not sure, because this seems to be the way that it's only doing it for the worker, I'm actually not positive of how I'm going to run Celery Beat, which is troubling because I'm just not sure what to do about that. Because you can see, I've got to invoke the same command down here, but when you're using the Celery binary, it uses beat. And a lot of the stuff is the same, like the logging level and the app name, but the tool to run it is, the subcommand to run it is different. So that's what we'll have to figure out. Okay, now that the main file is running the Celery, because this would really become run Celery Worker if that's all this does, which may be the harsh reality of this. And I guess I haven't talked much about this, but I find it as a kind of a weakness of Shiv. So I took this path of bundling everything up, and it has the nice effect of creating a single artifact. So there's like one thing to install, and that's nice, but the problem with this approach is that every binary that is normally installed in the virtual environment, like you can see here, anything that's in the bin that's installed when the packages are installed is no longer accessible in the same way. And this main file is essentially becoming a place to run what I otherwise would have in the binary stuff. And that's a challenge. Like that's not, it'd be nice if there was a way to have Shiv run a binary that would have normally been installed in the packaging process. And perhaps there is a way that I'm unaware of. I might go bug the maintainer of Shiv and see if he has any ideas on how to do that. So let's poke at this a little bit more and build the package one more time. And this time I'm going to actually pass in all of ArgV and see if that just blows up spectacularly, or if it will give us another lever on this. I just don't know. So let's remove the current PYZ and run the package script again. My gut tells me it's going to fail if we try and run it, because it's not going to know. Yeah, it's probably just not going to know what to run, but we'll figure that out. So the package script itself, which I've walked through in the past, it takes my own app code, puts that into a package, takes all of the dependencies, and collects all that code, puts all of that into a single directory, and then that entire directory is what gets zipped up and bundled together. And then Shiv does a little bit of stuff to make sure that it calls main when it gets started as an executable. So now if we do this and type Celery, let's see what happens. Unrecognized argument Celery. Yeah. Okay, what if we give it -h? No, that's not going to work that at all. It's, those are the settings for G unicorn. Yeah. So let's go back to this mode. I'm going to remove that and circle SHA-1, ABCD, package. That way, if we have to go through the cycle multiple times, I now have a single command that we can just go back in our history, and it will do 2 steps in one. Sometimes that's a useful technique of if you want to chain commands together for historical purposes, you do, command 1, ampersand, command 2, and your shell will run them in parallel. Alternatively, like if you only want to run a second command if a first command was successful, you can use the double pipe, which is the OR operator, and do like that, and command 2 will only run if command 1 was good. So let's try running the package with Celery this time, so that we'll go to the Celery run method. I want to pass in -h and see if it gives us other options for things. It may not. Oh, cool. Oh, nice. Also run the Celery beat periodic task scheduler. So maybe this is a way that we can do it in a single thing. That would be fantastic. These are embedded beat options. Oh, that's awesome. So we don't need to supply app because we're going to do that ourselves. But what else? What else do we need? We can pretend. Let's pretend to be Celery beat then, using these options that are down here. So we'll say Celery -beat --beat, and then the other things that I had to pass it were a PID file and a schedule. So we'll do schedule is Celery schedule, and PID file Celery beat.pid. Let's see if that works, or what that'll do. I'm not really sure because it didn't give enough logging. And I would assume that it's running as the beat in that one, but I'm not positive. So let's say log level of info. I'll get a little bit more stuff in here. Oh, look at that. That's super cool. So it's starting as beat as well. Great. So I think what that tells me is that this strategy is going to work, which is awesome. So it's not going to be just the Celery Worker, it'll just be all of Celery. We'll change it to that. And then now that I have confidence that this is the right stuff to do, we're going to come in here and start to switch this stuff around. So we don't need to look at the main file for a moment. We'll come back to it for the next one. But let's look at the playbook, the web role that has this. So we've got tasks that are over here and conductor. Yeah. So the way I did this was this serve apps conductor.pyz is actually a symlink, symbolic link to whatever the latest version is of my app. So if I were to upgrade Celery, this would come along with that. So we can drop, this gets simpler. We can drop the worker, we can drop the app, and that's all well and good. What else? What else is going to be true? Where, I don't know that it matters where we run this from, because now we're running it as this command. So I don't think that matters. I mean, for the sake of it, for keeping it, just in case it does matter, and we want to remove all of the other variables that might break this, let's try it like that. Say serve apps. And then we are going to come down here and use the same command that was here. But now, instead of using beat as a subcommand, we're going to ditch that stuff and then add in -- beat. And change this to serve apps. And hopefully the rest of that just stays the same. So let's look over here at the task. I didn't put any subtasks on this one, so maybe that's all we need to consider. So let's keep going with that to see if that's going to be successful. And check it out. So we're not going to need that Celery schedule. That was just a test. What if we changed? Looking back at our main file, the refactoring from the last, I didn't commit that last time, is there. And we're calling worker main and passing it the arguments to run Celery. And we've got the subcommands down here. That's all good. We modified our packaging script so that the virtual environment will only be used when CI is there, hopefully. And we'll check circle CI in a minute to see if that's true. And then we've modified the playbook to do this differently, call Celery differently. But I think I want to do this actually in 2 stages. I'm going to commit the changes to the packaging and the conductor, and we're going to do the playbook stuff separately. And I have decent reason for that. Like, I'm pretty convinced that the Celery piece, the bundling of Celery, I think that part is right. I'm less convinced about the playbook. And so when I do deployments to the staging site, I can modify the playbook multiple times, and then we can get it right if it is wrong. And then once the staging site is proven that Celery is doing what I think it should be doing, then we can commit the playbook change. And the playbook is part of the deployment process, if you are not aware. So let's commit this. And we'll say, what will we say? I know what it's going to say. MyPy is going to say that we're wrong. So make MyPy. I'm pretty sure, yep. We were just going to stare at Circle CI blaming us for not checking stuff. I use type annotations on all this code, and I have MyPy enforce it across the code base. So these functions need types, return types. And that's probably not even good enough. Yeah, ArgV, I don't really care what's in here. It's probably technically a list of strings, but it really should not matter. Okay. Let's try committing this stuff again. And we'll use our commit message. We'll say bake Celery into Shiv App. This is for issue number 391. Push that up. So now we have to wait a minute for Circle to finish. You can go check out Circle and watch it. I like staring at it. I don't know why. There's some weird satisfaction with seeing all the pipeline do its thing. It's kind of magical. Here's our pipeline. Both of those are cached, so they should have finished pretty quickly. Like the build JavaScript one is cached, it just finished. And I thought the build Python one was done. What are you doing over here? Maybe I tweaked something before, since my last commit. I don't know. When's the last time I touched the requirements file? Oh, I did update rollbar, but that was a while ago. Pretty sure I've pushed since then. So I don't know why the cache did not find something. Maybe they changed their cache keys? That could be something as well. Well, whatever. It's okay. So it's moving on to the next stage. The building of the assets and the linting were both blocked by this build py step. And the part where Shiv happens, and then that we'll actually see if the package, if I did the packaging stuff right, will be in this step down here, the package py spot. So once this builds out, and actually, in fact, while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and start my staging server, which is nothing more than a virtual machine. It's a Vagrant machine. And let that get up and running. So once this finishes, we'll be able to, what we'll be able to do, we'll do a provision, and we'll do it with a modified playbook. And we'll know pretty quickly if I got the format generally right, because if the process fails to start, then supervisor, which is the process manager, will crash and the deploy will fail. So that'll be really obvious. I still want to check it though, even after that. So let's say it gets through that stuff and we've got the deploy is done. We can SSH to that machine and actually check on the logs and see if they have dumped out the information that we expect to dump out. And what I expect to see is like the worker should be showing that it's tracking the tasks still, and the beat should be declaring that message of started beat. And if those two things are true, then I think I'll have convinced myself that Celery is now working properly in a Shiv context. So we're still waiting on packaging. It's running that package script. The fact that it didn't fail tells me that I think it used the VM variable that was there. Oh. Boo. What is this? Poetry has requirement. Who's using poetry? Whatever. I don't think that's a problem for my process itself. I do need to upgrade some of these packages, but that's for a different day. I was thinking about a future stream that we could do is probably go through the process of upgrading Django versions and checking all the steps that go along with that. I know Django has stabilized even more over recent years, so that process is getting easier, but it's still something that you have to be fairly systematic about checking it, and I think that might make for a good content to review. Okay, the virtual machine is up. It's up successfully. That's what all that information is telling me. And in order to run the deployment tool, we run Vagrant Provision. And now that the packaging step is all done, this should pull the latest Shiv app from S3, which has the ability to run Celery. So this will be another minute or two to get all this done. And part of this, as a reminder, well, not part of this, quite a bit of this will go away. There's a bunch of pieces that just aren't going to be needed anymore in here. And I got rid of Node.js last week after we've successfully transitioned over all of the commands into the Shiv app and anything that's using the virtual environment. Virtual environment will be able to go away. Pretty much the only stuff that I'll need on this server, well, there's still a bunch, but the database and Nginx, which acts as the load balancer, and the Shiv app needs to have a version of Python already installed. It can't do that itself. Well, that right there, that line's encouraging. I think that's the line that starts that Celery file that we modified. So that's good news. Cool. We got through deployment. So let's go check two files. Let's check varlog Celery, excuse me, and varlog Celery beat. So with Vagrant, you can SSH in there, just using Vagrant SSH. And they've got keys already established, so you just get in there as the user. And I'm going to run as root because I think that root, the var log directory, is protected if I recall. So let's navigate over there and check Celery log. Go to the bottom. Oh, that's interesting. A node named Celery at Vagrant is already using this process mailbox. I wonder what is that. Well, that's curious. I don't know what that's going to mean for us. If that's something wrong, or if it is a warning. It's a user warning. Search for that error message. And yeah. Should have a unique name. I don't know what that message is about. And I've never seen it before, so I suspect it's coming from the change we made. Oh, let's check the Celery beat one. Maybe that other machine is what? Maybe it's also named Celery at Vagrant. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. So there's an interesting ramification of this, is like, it could be, I don't have a lot of traffic on my site, just very little, in fact, and that's okay. Like, this is mostly about teaching on, and I'm happy to kind of tinker around on the site and go through the same kind of processes that I would go through in a more in a trafficked site, a site with more traffic. But I'm just trying to consider, like, what is truly required here. And so if the beat flag is running and I have a low traffic site that is only running a single worker, maybe I don't need multiple of these. Maybe I can get away with running one Celery block and letting beat run from a single worker. And yeah, it's worth a shot. So, because I think that would simplify things even further. So the difference between these is the concurrency level and the beat flag. So if I give myself a couple of workers, because there could be multiple tasks coming in, let's put concurrency in here. And then I want to comment out this whole block like that. Whoops. I have stale editor, so let's try that again. So let's take that and put that like that. So maybe that would get rid of, because there could be a race condition that's happening, like since they both have both the workers, the Celery beat in this case and the Celery worker are starting up at the same time, and they both think they're workers, perhaps the default name for the worker is Celery. And in fact, we might even be able to check that. Let's see if we can find an old startup. I don't know. It doesn't look like it was. It doesn't look like Beat was logging enough to show what its name was. I was hoping to see if it would say like it thought its name was Beat at Vagrant. But my theory is that this will eliminate that error message because, well, the other log will just stop updating. And yeah, and it will also have the effect of simplifying deployment even further. And if it was like a scenario where I needed the things to have separate names, I could use Jinja and have add a name flag here that said -name, and if I needed multiple of these, I could put multiple of these, or I could just put a worker. There are ways that I could do this without removing this block, but I'm going to try to remove it just to clean things up. See if that works. So let's get out of Vagrant and let's run a Vagrant provision again. Actually, I want to check one more thing in Vagrant. Sorry, I'm going to look at the process list. So, wow, that's too many. Let's narrow it down to Celery. And what do we have here? So we've got, I think, I can never remember the right order for processes. Okay. Looking at the top, here's the process output. This is the user that owns the process. The PID stands for process identifier. So PID is equal to process identifier. And PPID is equal to parent process identifier. All right, so that should be enough to explain the output below. This, if you look at this, you might be wonder like, oh, wait a minute, this is way more stuff than we launched. So what's going on? So what's happening is, I think, so notice that some of these processes, like here's the Celery with a concurrency of 2. It launches a child process, I guess. So the parent process started, and that's what, I'm not seeing the parent process. That's what's disturbing me. I would expect that one of these PIDs would be match 3649, but I don't know. It's not there, and that's weird. And I can definitely see that we've got 3700. Let's list it again. Let's clear all this crap because it's hard to see. So I think that the beat ones are going to have an interrelationship between each other. So here is the first beat one. It's PID 3700. Here's the second beat one. Look, it's got a parent PID of 3700. And here's the third beat one with a parent PID of 3700. So that tells me, and I know there's a fancier way to do this with system control, or I'm not really sure what the right command is, but you can see the hierarchy. So this first one is the master parent, or it's just the parent, I guess. And the other two, they must have a default concurrency of 2, are the 2 child processes that were spawned off by the parent. And similarly, the worker, I would kind of expect that, well, here we go. Yeah, 3699 is the PID for this worker, and it has two child processes, here and here. Okay, so that makes sense. But I think all of this stuff is too much. Like, for the amount of traffic that I have, what this is effectively telling me is that there are 4 workers handling basically no tasks, and the droplet that it's on, I deploy this stuff to DigitalOcean. The droplet that it's on only has a couple of cores anyway, so there is sometimes I/O is the problem, so that it's useful to have multiple workers, but I think we're way overkill on what we need, which is also convincing me that killing this section up above is okay. So let's change this name to just Celery, and it's going to do both, but I still just want to call it Celery, because now we're just kind of saying all Celery stuff is going to be in one place. And it's going to have its Celery beat and the schedule, which is all good. Now I think I'm ready to do that provision command. And what we should see on the other side when we go back in there and do a listing of the processes is that there should be only 3. And it should be the one that looks like the beat variety. So the concurrency 2 is going to go on the beat line, and there will be 2 child processes that are actually doing the work. So I think I haven't dug into all of the code of Celery, but I think the architecture of it is the master process for a worker is what connects to RabbitMQ. And after it connects to RabbitMQ, it's looking for work, and anytime it gets a message, it will round robin or farm out through some sort of distribution load balancing mechanism. It will give out the work to its child processes to actually do the processing. And if it's not busy itself, I think even if it's not busy, I think it will also run the work itself. So you kind of get 3 processes that can do work. Okay, let's go back in to our staging environment. I shouldn't go in and out like this. I should just leave one of them connected, but oh well. Let's check our processes. What's going on here? So this is interesting. Oh, I think I know. I think I have an idea. We said concurrency is 2, but we also said beat. So here's our master process. Here are the 3 child processes. I suspect one of them is the beat scheduler, and the other 2 are just regular worker processes. And this is an important constraint within Celery, because and it makes good sense, because it's the thing that is in charge of managing the periodic tasks. And you can imagine if you had more than one beat scheduler, and the scheduler is designed to create a new task every 5 minutes. Well, now that if you've got 2 of them, you're now doubling that, because both schedulers think I need to create a task every 5 minutes. So this is all reasonable. Let's look at the log file. Var log Celery, and so this is the shutdown from before. There's that scary looking warning that we had before. That's now gone. So here's the startup. Here are the tasks that are part of that. It says it's starting beat, which is good. It connected to AMQP, that's RabbitMQ. AMQP is the protocol for RabbitMQ. And then it's saying, hey, I'm ready. I'm the worker that's ready. So all good. Okay. So let's clean this up. Oops, wrong direction. So we're left with this, where a smaller number of processes are now running on the server, which I think is cool. It's a simpler configuration to say what it needs. And we got rid of a bunch of stuff. So let's commit this playbook. What do I want to say? Make worker playbook use Shiv App. And this fixes number 391. Okay, let's go back to GitHub. All right, that was closed with the commit we just made. What do we have left? Well, we need to remove the virtual environment from Ansible tasks, but I don't think that we're ready to do that. And I say that because I think what's still in here, and the name of it is VN path. So let's keep searching. So that's declared there, but the problem is it's used in a couple of places still. It's used by this backup tool. And it's used for installing. There's the step to install it, that's fine. But the backup tool is what we're gonna have to fix. And that's gonna be maybe trickier. It's a tool called Wally. And I think that's where we're gonna pick up next time. So we need a new issue for this milestone. And it's going to be a similar process with Celery, like we did tonight, but it'll be a new command to use Wally and then test all that out. And that requires testing database backups, which is a tricky thing to do. So we're going to say run Wally from Shiv App. We'll create the task and end there. So that's what I got tonight. Hope that was informative. Like you learned a little bit about how Celery works. And I know I certainly did, about how to run the process directly, which is kind of cool. Running the beat scheduler from a specific flag off of a worker, that's neat too. I will post this recording to YouTube and write up a bunch of notes from what we chatted about tonight and what we covered. And then next week, we will dive into Wally and building that out. And then we can hopefully rip out the virtual environment. I don't know if we'll get all the way through both of those things, but that is the goal. So if you found this useful and you want to like or subscribe or follow on Twitch, I would appreciate that. And thank you for tuning in tonight. Take care.